Marvel has perfected a commercial machine of adapting fan-favorite storylines into big-budget comic book films and now TV. And the new Hawkeye trailer shows that this new show is an adaptation, in some cases, scene for scene, of a fan-favorite run by Matt Fraction and David Aja from 2012. And of course, it stars the likes of Jeremy Renner, and people like him have huge contracts. Directors, producers, screenwriters, adapters, but the original creators? Doesn't sound like they're actually getting that money. So this week we're going to talk about fair compensation and what that actually means. I'm Dan Umpton, and this is the Doomcast. Earlier this year, legendary writer Ed Brubaker, the co-creator of Winter Soldier, said that he and Steve Epting had received little more than a thanks from Marvel and Disney after Sebastian Stan's portrayal of Winter Soldier over years of Marvel film and TV. And of course, in this article in The Guardian, other Marvel creators, some of which were anonymous, have cited receiving $5,000 in an invitation to the premiere. Now, for me, and for most of us, $5,000 is a lot of money, and an invitation to a premiere would be really cool, honestly. But the point stands, when your movie made $1 billion worldwide, is $5,000 fair compensation for that work? And this boils down to the theory of value. Some would argue that a product, the sum total of the labor and capital, is worth what somebody is willing to pay for it, what you can sell it for, and some prominent historical theorists otherwise argue that ultimately all costs are labor, and that to retain the entire surplus value created by that labor is theft. And I'm inclined to agree. Mostly, I think that I fall into the Jay and Silent Bob camp of 15 bucks, little man, put that shit in my hand. If that money doesn't show, then you owe me, oh. Oh. Jungle Love. Okay. The story, which is the result of the sequential art and plot created by the team, is the basis of not only the concept and character that's being sold in the form of the film, it is also the reason there is any demand for such films at all. It is both labor and capital, and ultimately should rightly be owned by those who created it, but since comics industry is largely work for hire and company owned in the big two, such a situation is legally unimaginable, which is to say that Marvel and DC have not ever allowed creators, generally speaking, to own the rights to the characters that they created. But again, as we said, there would not be any demand for this if not for their work. So this is arguably different now, right? It's reasonable to say that the surplus value of nearly $1.7 billion created from a movie with nearly $400 million in budget like Avengers Endgame, a creator should get a lot more than just $5,000, right? Like it should be quit your job money. Like it should be designer pre-rolls and Wagyu steak and like Cristal money, Bentley money, Disney money. I'm not being crazy here. I don't think that like Mickey Mouse himself should have to come and fart a roll of cash into like Jim Starlin's hands for creating Thanos. Although you should get, that would be pretty funny. A modest proposal for Marvel and DC: the price for adapting any character or story, any creator, in part or in whole, starts at the average cost of a 3-bedroom home in their zip code, plus their remaining student loans, if any, plus their children's total potential college fund, plus 0.5% of the profits. And to be clear, this is perfectly reasonable because with 1% less on a $1 billion total revenue movie, they make close to $1 billion, enough to still call it $1 billion in a rounding error. Everybody still makes their money. The directors still make millions. The actors still make tens of millions. The people who invested make their dividends. But now Ed Brubaker makes $5 million instead of a mere 5,000, which, if you're doing the math, is less than 0.1% of $1 billion. A Disney stock price, by comparison, has doubled in the last 5 years alone and up 43% in the last calendar year. The entire reason the MCU exists is because generations of men and women dreamed big, practiced writing, practiced drawing, broke pencils, spilled ink, crumpled paper, spent their lives never living up to their own expectations, and still, even after making something that was adapted into a $1 billion movie, still don't live up to their own expectations, and they still create from people like Jim Starland, Ed Brubaker, Christopher Priest, Matt Fraction, David Aha, Walt and Louise Simonson, Ann Nesenti, Dan Abnett, Annie Lanning, even the estates of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. The price of making one of the largest corporations in America $1 billion should at least be a cut. Maybe not 0.5%. But hey, a reasonable compromise, I think. And it's only going to happen if fans like us demand it. I think it's at least fair to say that if you created a $1 billion property, you probably shouldn't have a mortgage anymore. Thanks for watching. This has been the Doomcast. We'll see you next week.